The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered against the concrete floor of my garage. Helena's voice carried through the thin walls from our kitchen, sharp and animated in a way I hadn't heard in months. Not when she talked to me, anyway. "Derek understands what I need," she was saying into her phone. "He actually listens when I talk about my career goals." I wiped my hands on an oil-stained rag and crept closer to the door connecting the garage to our house. 23 years of marriage, and I was reduced to eavesdropping on my own wife like some paranoid fool. "Hale, he's too busy playing with his cars to notice anything. I could probably move Derek in here and it would take him a week to figure it out." Her laughter felt like acid in my ears. I pressed my back against the cool metal of my toolbox, trying to process what I'd just heard. Derek Polanski, her so-called financial consultant, the smooth-talking snake who'd been helping her with investment strategies for the past 6 months. The kitchen door swung open, and Helena appeared in her navy business suit, phone still pressed to her ear. She looked right through me like I was just another piece of garage equipment. "I have to go," she said into the phone. "The mechanic is staring at me." The mechanic, not her husband, not Hale, the mechanic. She ended the call and grabbed her gym bag from the shelf near the door. "I'm going to my Pilates class, don't wait up." "Helena," I started, but she was already walking away, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor with military precision. I stood there for a long moment, listening to her car pull out of the driveway. My hands were shaking, and I couldn't tell if it was from anger or something else entirely. The woman I'd married straight out of college, the one who used to laugh at my terrible jokes and steal bites of my breakfast, had just called me the mechanic to whoever was on the other end of that phone. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for months, maybe longer, but I'd been too stubborn or too stupid to see it. Helena had been working late more often, taking mysterious phone calls in other rooms, and treating me like an inconvenience in my own home. I walked back to my workbench and picked up the wrench. The 1967 Mustang I'd been restoring sat before me, its engine bay exposed like an open wound. At least cars made sense. You could diagnose their problems, fix what was broken, and make them run better than before. People were more complicated. My phone buzzed with a text message. "Helena. Staying at Jennifer's tonight. Girl talk." Jennifer Morrison lived 3 states away and hadn't spoken to Helena since their falling out 2 years ago. I knew this because Helena had spent an entire evening complaining about Jennifer's betrayal over some book club drama. I stared at the text message until the screen went dark, then set the phone down with deliberate care. My wife was lying to me. Not just stretching the truth or avoiding an uncomfortable conversation. She was outright lying about where she planned to spend the night. The garage suddenly felt too small, too quiet. I needed air, space to think. I grabbed my jacket and headed for Marty's boxing gym, the only place in town where I could clear my head without someone asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. The gym smelled like sweat and determination, familiar scents that usually brought me comfort. Tonight, they just reminded me of everything I wasn't: young, strong, confident. Marty looked up from the heavy bag he'd been adjusting and nodded in my direction. "You look like someone ran over your cat," he said. "What's eating you?" Marty had been my friend since high school, back when we both thought we'd conquer the world with nothing but attitude and elbow grease. He'd opened this gym after his construction business went under, and somehow made it work through sheer stubbornness. "Helena's acting strange," I said, not quite ready to voice my suspicions out loud. "Strange how?" Marty handed me a pair of worn boxing gloves. "Sometimes hitting something helps you think clearer." I pulled on the gloves and approached the heavy bag. The first punch felt awkward, unpracticed. The second one landed with more authority. She's distant, secretive. Tonight she claimed she was going to Jennifer Morrison's house. Jennifer who moved to Oregon? That's the one. I threw another punch, harder this time. She thinks I'm too stupid to remember her friends. Marty held the bag steady while I worked out my frustration on the leather surface. What are you going to do about it? I don't know yet. Maybe I'm imagining things. Maybe she really is just stressed about work. Or maybe she's not. Marty's voice carried the weight of experience. His own marriage had ended badly 5 years ago, though he'd never talked about the details. You want my advice? Trust your gut. It's usually right about these things. I spent another hour at the gym, but the physical exercise didn't quiet the thoughts racing through my mind. When I finally returned home, Helena's car was still gone. The house felt different somehow, emptier, like she'd taken more than just her overnight bag when she left. I wandered through the rooms we'd shared for over 2 decades, looking for clues I might have missed. In our bedroom, her jewelry box sat slightly askew on the dresser. Helena was meticulous about organization, everything in its proper place. I opened the box and found her wedding ring nestled in the velvet lining. She'd left her wedding ring at home. My hands trembled as I picked up the simple gold band we'd chosen together all those years ago. She'd worn it every day since our wedding, even when her fingers swelled during pregnancy with Ava. Now it sat abandoned in a jewelry box, while she spent the night somewhere else. I sat on the edge of our bed, still holding the ring, trying to remember when things had started to change between us. When had Helena stopped looking at me like I mattered? When had I become just the mechanic instead of her husband? My phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. Helena's name appeared on the screen. Hello? I answered, trying to keep my voice neutral. I forgot my phone charger, she said without preamble. Can you bring it to Jennifer's tomorrow? Which Jennifer? I asked, testing her. Morrison, obviously. Who else would I be visiting? The lie came so easily, so naturally, that I almost believed it myself. Almost. Sure, I said. What's her address again? There was a pause, just long enough to confirm my suspicions. I'll text it to you. I have to go. We're about to start a movie. The line went quiet, and I was alone again with my thoughts and my wife's abandoned wedding ring. Tomorrow, I would start looking for answers. Tonight, I would try to sleep in a bed that suddenly felt too big and too cold. But first, I had a phone call to make. I dialed Marty's number at 6 in the morning, knowing he'd be awake. Old habits from his construction days meant he was always up before dawn. This better be important, he answered on the second ring. I need help with something I can't handle alone. 20 minutes later, Marty sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, listening while I explained about the phone call, the wedding ring, and Helena's obvious lies about Jennifer Morrison. So, what's your plan? He asked when I finished. I don't have one yet. I just know I can't sit here pretending everything is normal while she... I couldn't finish the sentence. Saying the words out loud would make them real. While she what, Hale? You need to be honest about what you think is happening here. I stared into my coffee cup, watching the cream swirl in lazy patterns. While she's with Derek Polanski, while she's planning to leave me, while she's making me look like a fool in front of the whole town. Marty nodded slowly. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. You want to know for sure? We need evidence. I can't hire a private investigator. Helena handles our finances, and she'd notice that kind of expense immediately. Who said anything about hiring anyone? Marty's expression grew thoughtful. Remember Tommy Chen from high school? He runs a security company now. Owes me a favor from when I helped him move his equipment. I shook my head. I'm not putting cameras in my own house. That's too far. Not in your house, in public places. Tommy knows which hotels and motels don't mind a little extra security monitoring in their parking lots. The idea made my stomach churn, but I needed to know the truth. How would that even work? Simple. We figure out Helena's patterns, where she goes when she's supposedly with friends. Tommy sets up discreet surveillance in those areas. If she's meeting someone, we'll have proof. 2 hours later, I found myself in Tommy's cramped office above his electronics store, feeling like I was crossing a line I could never uncross. Tommy had aged well since high school, still lean and sharp-eyed, with the kind of technical expertise that made him valuable to people who needed information. "I can't do anything illegal," he said, after Marty explained the situation. "But I can monitor public spaces where people might expect to be observed anyway." "What does that mean exactly?" I asked. "Hotel parking lots, restaurant entrances, shopping centers, places where security cameras are already common. If your wife is meeting someone in these locations, we'll capture it." He showed me a tablet displaying feeds from various locations around town. The image quality was surprisingly clear, even in low light conditions. "How much?" I asked. "For Marty? Nothing. But you'll owe me a favor someday." I nodded, though the idea of owing favors to people in Tommy's line of work made me uncomfortable. "What do you need from me?" "Her schedule, car description and license plate, any locations she frequents." I provided the information, feeling like I was betraying Helena, even though she'd already betrayed me. Her silver BMW, her usual restaurants, the gym where she claimed to take Pilates classes, everything that might help Tommy track her movements. "Give me 3 days," Tommy said. "If something's happening, we'll find it." Those 3 days crawled by with agonizing slowness. Helena returned home the next evening, acting perfectly normal, except for the careful way she avoided looking directly at me. She talked about her night with Jennifer, describing conversations and activities with just enough detail to sound convincing. I played along, asking appropriate questions and nodding at the right moments, all while studying her face for tells. She was good at lying, better than I'd ever imagined. How long had she been practicing this deception? On the 3rd day, Tommy called. "You need to see this," he said. "Can you come by the office?" My hands were shaking as I drove across town. Part of me hoped Tommy had found nothing, that my suspicions were just the paranoid fantasies of an insecure husband. The other part of me needed confirmation that I wasn't losing my mind. Tommy's expression was grim when he led me to his computer setup. "I'm sorry, Hale. I really am." The first image showed Helena's BMW in the parking lot of the Riverside Motel, a rundown establishment on the outskirts of town that rented rooms by the hour. The timestamp indicated Tuesday evening, the same night she'd claimed to be with Jennifer. The second image showed Helena walking toward room 237, her arm linked with a man I recognized immediately. Derek Polanski, with his perfectly styled hair and expensive suit, looking like he owned the world. The third image was taken through the motel room window. Helena and Derek were embracing, and there was no mistaking the intimacy of their interaction. "There's more," Tommy said quietly. "They've been meeting there twice a week for the past month. Always the same room, always paid for in cash." I stared at the images until they blurred together. 23 years of marriage, reduced to evidence files on a computer screen. Helena, the woman who'd promised to love and honor me, sneaking around cheap motels with a man who probably saw her as nothing more than a convenient conquest. "What else do you have?" I asked. Tommy pulled up additional files. Phone records from the motel's business line. Derek Polanski has been calling to reserve that room every Monday and Thursday for 6 weeks. Credit card receipts from restaurants where they've had dinner before their meetings. Gas station purchases that put Derek's car in your neighborhood on nights when Helena worked late. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. My wife was having an affair, and she'd been lying to my face about it for months. "I need copies of everything," I said. "Already prepared." Tommy handed me a flash drive. "I'm sorry it turned out this way." I drove home in a daze, the flash drive burning like a hot coal in my pocket. Helena's car was in the driveway when I arrived, and I could see her moving around in the kitchen through the window. She looked beautiful and normal and completely unaware that her secret had been exposed. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, trying to figure out what to do next. Confront her immediately? Wait and gather more evidence? Pretend I knew nothing and see how far she'd take her deception? Finally, I walked into the house and found Helena preparing dinner. My favorite meal, pot roast with vegetables. She smiled when she saw me, the same warm expression she'd worn when we were newlyweds. "How was your day?" she asked, as if she actually cared about the answer. "Productive," I said. "I learned some interesting things." Something flickered in her eyes, too quick to identify. "Oh? Like what?" "Just business stuff, nothing you'd find exciting." She nodded and returned to her cooking. "Derek stopped by the bank today. He mentioned you two had a conversation last week." I hadn't spoken to Derek in months, but Helena was fishing for information, trying to figure out what I might know. The casual way she brought up his name, like he was just another acquaintance, made my stomach turn. "Did he?" I kept my voice level. "I talked to a lot of people. Hard to keep track of every conversation. He said you seemed upset about something. I just wanted to make sure everything was okay between us. Between us. As if Derek Polanski was now part of our marriage, a third party whose opinion mattered in our relationship." "Everything's fine," I lied, matching her deception with my own. "Derek probably misunderstood something. You know how he is." Helena relaxed visibly. "Good. I'd hate for there to be any awkwardness. Derek's been so helpful with our financial planning." Our financial planning. I wondered what other aspects of our life Derek had been helping with, what other boundaries he'd crossed while I worked in my garage, oblivious to the betrayal happening under my own roof. Dinner passed in surreal normalcy. Helena talked about her day, asked about mine, and played the role of devoted wife with Oscar-worthy performance. I responded appropriately, asked follow-up questions, and pretended my world hadn't just collapsed around me. After she went to bed, I sat in my garage with the flash drive, staring at the evidence of my wife's infidelity. The smart thing would be to call a lawyer immediately, file for divorce, and try to salvage what remained of my dignity. But I wasn't feeling particularly smart. I was feeling angry, betrayed, and tired of being treated like a fool. Helena wanted to play games? Fine. I could play games too. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was working under the hood of the Mustang when I heard footsteps on the gravel driveway. Derek Polanski stood in the entrance to my garage, looking like he'd stepped out of a men's fashion magazine. "Hale," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hope you don't mind me dropping by." I straightened up slowly, wiping my hands on a rag. "Derek, this is a surprise. What brings you to my humble garage?" "I wanted to talk to you about Helena. She's been worried about you lately." The audacity of the man was breathtaking. He was sleeping with my wife and had the nerve to show up at my home, expressing fake concern for my well-being. Worried about me? That's interesting. What exactly is she worried about? Derek stepped further into the garage, his expensive shoes clicking on the concrete floor. "She thinks you might be going through some kind of midlife crisis, working too much, staying out late, acting suspicious." I almost laughed. Helena was projecting her own behavior onto me, and Derek was here to gauge my reaction. They were probably concerned that I was getting too close to the truth. "Suspicious how?" I asked. "Following her around town, asking questions about her schedule. She's starting to feel like you don't trust her." The irony was so thick I could taste it. My cheating wife was worried that I didn't trust her, and she'd sent her lover to confront me about it. "Trust is earned," I said carefully, "and maintained through honesty." Derek's smile faltered slightly. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I trust my wife completely. If she says she's somewhere, I believe her. If she tells me she's with friends, I take her at her word. Trust isn't the problem here." I could see Derek trying to parse my words, looking for hidden meanings or threats. He was used to being the smartest person in the room, but he was operating with incomplete information. "Good," he said finally, "because Helena is a special woman. She deserves a husband who appreciates what he has." Now he was getting bolder, almost challenging me directly. I set down my rag and faced him fully. "You're absolutely right," I said. "Helena is special, and any man who tries to come between us would be making a serious mistake." Derek's eyes narrowed. I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. Helena is my wife, and I protect what's mine. We stared at each other for a long moment. Derek was trying to intimidate me, but I had advantages he didn't know about. I knew exactly what he was doing, while he could only guess at what I might know. Well, he said finally, I'm glad we had this talk. I'll let Helena know you're doing fine. You do that. And Derek? Next time you want to check on me, maybe call first. I don't like unexpected visitors. After he left, I called Marty and told him about the confrontation. He's getting nervous, Marty said. That's good. Nervous people make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The kind that give us more ammunition. Keep playing dumb, but start paying closer attention to everything. If they're worried about what you know, they might get careless. That evening, Helena was unusually affectionate. She cooked my favorite dinner again, asked detailed questions about my day, and even suggested we watch a movie together. The sudden attention felt calculated, like she was trying to gauge my mood and rebuild my confidence in our relationship. Derek mentioned he stopped by your garage today, she said during dinner. Yeah, he wanted to talk about some financial stuff. Nice guy. Helena studied my face carefully. What did you think of his suggestions? What suggestions? We barely talked about finances, mostly just chatted about cars and the weather. I could see her confusion. Derek had probably told her about our tense conversation, but now I was downplaying the entire encounter. She didn't know what to believe. Oh, she said. I thought he was going to discuss some investment opportunities with you. Maybe next time. I was pretty busy with the Mustang. The lies came easily now. I was learning to speak Helena's language, deception wrapped in casual conversation, truth hidden behind misdirection. After dinner, Helena excused herself to take a phone call in the bedroom. I crept close to the door and listened to her side of the conversation. He didn't seem suspicious at all, she was saying. Actually seemed friendlier than usual. A pause while the other person responded. No, I don't think he knows anything. Derek might have misread the situation. Another pause. Tomorrow night should be fine. He's got that poker game with his friends. I did have a poker game planned for tomorrow night, a monthly tradition with guys from the garage. But now I knew Helena was planning to use my absence for another meeting with Derek. I smiled grimly and returned to the kitchen. Tomorrow night, I would be playing poker as scheduled, but I wouldn't be the only one watching the cards. The next day, I called Tommy and told him about Helena's plans. Perfect, he said. I'll have extra coverage on the motel tomorrow night. If they're meeting there again, we'll get everything. I also made another call, to a number I'd found in Helena's purse while she was showering. The contact was listed as Jennifer M., but I suspected it wasn't Jennifer Morrison. A man answered on the third ring. Derek Polanski. I hung up immediately. Helena had Derek's number saved under a fake name in her phone. The deception ran deeper than I'd imagined. That evening, I made a show of getting ready for poker night. Helena helped me find my lucky shirt and even packed snacks for me to share with the guys. Her performance was flawless, the supportive wife sending her husband off for a night with his friends. Don't wait up, I said, kissing her cheek. These games usually run pretty late. Have fun, she replied. I'll probably just read and go to bed early. I drove to Marty's house, where the poker game was already underway. But instead of staying, I explained the situation to the guys and asked them to cover for me if anyone called. You're playing a dangerous game, said Pete, one of the regulars. What if she finds out you're spying on her? Then I'll deal with that when it happens. Right now, I need to know exactly what I'm up against. I drove back toward town and parked at a diner across the street from the Riverside Motel. Tommy had given me a small tablet that would show me the feeds from his cameras in real time. At 9:30 p.m., Helena's BMW pulled into the motel parking lot. At 9:35, Derek's Audi joined it. I watched on the tablet screen as my wife of 23 years walked into a cheap motel room with another man. The image quality was crystal clear. There was no mistaking what I was seeing, no way to rationalize it as an innocent business meeting. They stayed for 2 hours. When they finally emerged, Helena looked relaxed and happy in a way I hadn't seen in months. Derek had his arm around her waist, and they were laughing about something as they walked to their cars. I sat in the diner parking lot for another hour after they left, trying to process what I'd witnessed. The woman I'd loved since college, the mother of my child, was living a double life. And she was good at it, so good that I might never have discovered the truth if I hadn't overheard that phone call. When I finally went home, Helena was in bed, pretending to sleep. Her breathing was too controlled, too even. She was awake, probably wondering if I suspected anything. I undressed quietly and slipped into bed beside her. She stirred slightly and murmured something about my poker game. Won a little, I whispered. Lost a little. About broke even. She made a sleepy sound and rolled over. Within minutes, her breathing became genuinely deep and regular. Helena could fall asleep easily because she thought she was winning this game. But the game wasn't over yet. In fact, it was just beginning. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and planning my next move. Helena wanted to play games? Derek wanted to steal my wife? Fine. But they were about to learn that I knew how to play games too, and I played to win. 3 weeks later, Helena served me with divorce papers. I was working in the garage when she appeared with an envelope and a lawyer I'd never seen before, a sharp-dressed woman with cold eyes and an expensive briefcase. "Hale," Helena said, her voice carefully neutral. "This is Patricia Vance, my attorney. We need to discuss some things." I set down my wrench and accepted the envelope with hands that I kept perfectly steady. Inside were legal documents accusing me of financial control, emotional abandonment, and creating a hostile home environment. "Financial control?" I asked, looking up at Helena. "You handle all our accounts. You pay the bills. You make the investment decisions." "Exactly," Patricia Vance said, before Helena could respond. "My client has been forced to manage the entire household, while you've neglected your responsibilities as a husband and provider." The accusations were so backwards, so completely opposite to reality, that I almost laughed. Helena made twice my salary at the bank, controlled every aspect of our finances, and had been systematically deceiving me for months. Now she was claiming to be the victim. "I see," I said carefully. "And what exactly is Helena seeking in this divorce?" "The house, her car, half of your business assets, and spousal support." Patricia rattled off like she was reading a grocery list. "She's also requesting that you vacate the premises within 30 days to give her space to heal from this traumatic situation." Traumatic situation. Helena was having an affair, but somehow I was the one causing trauma. "That seems like a lot," I said, "especially considering we haven't even tried marriage counseling." Helena finally spoke up. "I've tried to make this work, Hale. But you've become distant, suspicious, and controlling. I can't live like this anymore." She delivered the lines perfectly, like she'd been practicing. Maybe she had been practicing, with Derek coaching her on what to say. The thought made my stomach turn. "I'll need time to review these documents with my own attorney," I said. "Of course," Patricia said. "But I should warn you that my client has documented evidence of your increasingly erratic behavior. Fighting this divorce would not be in your best interests." After they left, I sat in my garage for a long time, holding the divorce papers and thinking about everything that had led to this moment. Helena wasn't just leaving me. She was trying to destroy me financially and socially. The accusations in these papers would follow me around town for years. I called Marty and asked him to meet me at the diner. "She's going for everything," I told him, sliding the papers across the table. "House, business, support payments. She wants to leave me with nothing." Marty read through the documents with growing anger. "This is garbage," Anyone who knows you would laugh at these accusations. That's the problem. Helena's been setting this up for months, maybe longer. She's probably been telling people I'm controlling and abusive. By the time this goes to court, half the town will believe her story. So what are you going to do? I pulled out my phone and showed him the latest photos Tommy had captured. Helena and Derek at a restaurant across town, holding hands across the table like teenagers. Helena and Derek entering a storage facility together, carrying boxes. Helena and Derek at a bank branch where neither of them worked, conducting some kind of business transaction. I'm going to give her exactly what she's asking for, I said. A public hearing where all the evidence comes out. You're going to fight the divorce? No, I'm going to let her have her day in court. And then I'm going to make sure everyone in that courtroom knows exactly what kind of person she really is. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. During that time, Helena moved out of the house and into a downtown apartment that probably cost more than my monthly income. She told everyone who would listen about her abusive marriage and her brave decision to start over. I played my part perfectly. I looked sad and confused when people asked about the divorce. I made vague comments about trying to work things out and hoping Helena would reconsider. I acted like the devastated husband who couldn't understand why his wife was leaving him. Meanwhile, Tommy continued his surveillance, and the evidence kept mounting. Helena and Derek weren't just having an affair, they were planning a future together. Tommy had captured them looking at houses, shopping for furniture, and even visiting a jewelry store where Derek appeared to be shopping for rings. But the most interesting discovery came when Tommy followed them to a storage facility on the outskirts of town. Helena had rented a unit under her maiden name and was systematically moving items from our house to the storage space, not just personal belongings, important documents, family heirlooms, and items that should have been included in the divorce asset inventory. She's hiding assets, Tommy explained, showing me photos of Helena loading boxes into the storage unit. These documents show she's been moving money around, opening accounts you don't know about, and transferring ownership of property. Can you prove it? I can prove she rented the storage unit and that she's been visiting it regularly, but I can't prove what's inside without a warrant, and you can't get a warrant without probable cause. I thought about this problem for several days before the solution came to me. I couldn't get inside the storage unit legally, but I could monitor who else visited it. I need you to watch that facility around the clock, I told Tommy. I want to know everyone who comes and goes, especially anyone who might be helping Helena move things. 2 days later, Tommy called with interesting news. You're not going to believe this, he said. There's a homeless guy who hangs around that storage facility. He helps people load and unload their units for tips. I watched him help Helena move boxes yesterday. So he saw what was in those boxes, and he's willing to talk about it for the right price. I met the homeless man at a coffee shop near the storage facility. He was older than I'd expected, probably in his 60s, with intelligent eyes and a military bearing that suggested he hadn't always been living on the streets. Name's Mike, he said, shaking my hand with a firm grip. Tommy says you're interested in what your wife's been storing. That's right. What did you see? Mike pulled out a small notebook and flipped through several pages. Financial documents, bank statements, investment records, property deeds, also jewelry, artwork, and what looked like family photos and heirlooms. Did you see any specific account numbers or dollar amounts? Some. She was careless about keeping things covered. I saw statements from 3 different banks, none of which matched the bank where she works. Mike's information was valuable, but it still wasn't enough to prove anything in court. I needed more than the testimony of a homeless man who might be dismissed as unreliable. That's when I had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. Mike, I said, how would you like to make some easy money? Depends on what I have to do. Nothing illegal, nothing dangerous. I just need you to be in a specific place at a specific time and tell the truth about what you've seen. Mike studied my face carefully. This is about more than just divorce proceedings, isn't it? It's about justice, I said. My wife is trying to destroy me while she runs off with her lover. She's hidden assets, lied to the court, and painted me as the villain in a story where I'm actually the victim. And you want me to help you set the record straight? I want you to help me give her enough rope to hang herself. Mike was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? The courthouse was packed on the morning of our hearing. Helena had done an excellent job of generating sympathy for herself around town, and it seemed like half the community had shown up to support her brave stand against her allegedly abusive husband. I sat at the defendant's table with my lawyer, a competent but unremarkable man named Robert Chen, who specialized in family law. Across the aisle, Helena looked beautiful and vulnerable in a conservative navy dress, with Patricia Vance beside her radiating righteous indignation. Judge Raymond Lawton called the court to order and asked Patricia to present Helena's case. For the next hour, I listened to my wife describe a marriage that bore no resemblance to the one I remembered. According to Helena, I was controlling, manipulative, and emotionally absent. I had isolated her from friends, criticized her career ambitions, and created an atmosphere of fear and intimidation in our home. My client has endured years of psychological abuse, Patricia said in her closing argument. She has been forced to manage every aspect of their household while Mr. Trenwick pursued his hobbies and ignored his responsibilities. She is seeking only what is fair, the opportunity to rebuild her life free from his influence. Several of Helena's friends testified on her behalf, describing how she had confided in them about my allegedly controlling behavior. They painted a picture of a woman trapped in an oppressive marriage, finally finding the courage to escape. When it was my lawyer's turn, he presented a much simpler case. I was a hard-working man who loved his wife and was confused by her sudden decision to leave. I had never been abusive or controlling, and I was willing to work on our marriage if Helena would consider counseling. Mr. Trenwick is devastated by these accusations, Robert said. He has always supported his wife's career and given her complete control over their finances. He is not the monster she has portrayed him to be. It was a competent defense, but not particularly compelling. Without evidence of Helena's affair or her financial deceptions, I looked like exactly what she claimed I was, a man in denial about his own behavior. Judge Lawton was preparing to call a recess when a commotion near the back of the courtroom caught everyone's attention. A court officer was escorting someone forward, a man in worn clothes with a manila envelope in his hand. It was Mike. "Your Honor," he said in a clear, strong voice, "may I show you something he doesn't know about?" The courtroom erupted in whispers. Patricia Vance jumped to her feet, objecting to the interruption, while Helena's face went pale. Judge Lawton banged his gavel for order. "Who are you?" the judge asked. "Mike Harrison, Your Honor. I have information relevant to these proceedings." Judge Lawton looked annoyed, but curious. "What kind of information?" Mike held up the manila envelope. "Evidence that Mrs. Trenwick has been hiding assets from the court and lying about her financial situation." The whispers turned into a buzz of excited conversation. Helena was staring at Mike with obvious recognition, and I could see panic in her eyes. "Objection!" Patricia shouted. "This man has no standing in these proceedings. We don't even know who he is or how he obtained any alleged evidence." "Your Honor," my lawyer said, standing up quickly, "we request permission to examine this evidence. If Mrs. Trenwick has been hiding assets, it's directly relevant to the property division." Judge Lawton considered for a moment, then nodded. "I'll allow it. Mr. Harrison, please approach the bench." Mike walked forward with steady confidence, nothing like the homeless drifter most people probably assumed he was. He handed the envelope to Judge Lawton, who opened it and began examining the contents. "These appear to be photographs and documents," the judge said. "Where did you obtain these materials?" "I work at the Riverside Storage Facility, Your Honor. I help customers load and unload their units. Mrs. Trenwick has been renting Unit 247 under her maiden name for the past 2 months. She's been storing financial documents and personal property that should have been disclosed in these proceedings. Helena was whispering frantically to her lawyer, but Patricia looked just as shocked as everyone else. This was not part of their plan. "Your Honor," Patricia said, "even if this man's claims are true, any evidence obtained without a warrant would be inadmissible." "I didn't search anything," Mike said calmly. "Mrs. Trenwick left documents visible when she was moving boxes. I also overheard her phone conversations while she worked. She was discussing bank accounts and property transfers with someone named Derek." The mention of Derek's name hit Helena like a physical blow. She actually swayed in her chair, and Patricia had to steady her. Judge Lawton studied the photographs more carefully. These images show documents with account numbers and property records. "Mr. Harrison, are you prepared to testify under oath about what you witnessed?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Very well. I'm calling a 1-hour recess while I examine this evidence more thoroughly. When we reconvene, I want both parties to be prepared to address these allegations." As the courtroom cleared, I caught Mike's eye and nodded slightly. He had played his part perfectly, presenting himself as a credible witness rather than a homeless man looking for a handout. Helena rushed out of the courtroom with her lawyer, probably to call Derek and figure out how much damage had been done. I stayed in my seat, watching the chaos unfold around me. Robert Chen looked stunned. "Where did this evidence come from?" "I hired a private investigator," I said, which was technically true. "I had suspicions about hidden assets." "Why didn't you tell me about this before?" "I wanted to see how far Helena would take her lies. Now we know." When court reconvened, Judge Lawton's demeanor had changed completely. He looked stern and disappointed as he addressed both parties. "I have reviewed the evidence presented by Mr. Harrison," he said. "The photographs show financial documents that were not disclosed during discovery. I am ordering an immediate forensic audit of both parties' finances to be conducted by a court-appointed accountant." Patricia tried to object, but the judge cut her off. "Furthermore," he continued, "I am troubled by the allegations that Mrs. Trenwick has been conducting this relationship under false pretenses. Mr. Harrison has provided sworn testimony that Mrs. Trenwick has been meeting regularly with a man named Derek Polanski, and that she has discussed financial matters with this individual." Helena was crying now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage and frustration. Her carefully constructed narrative was collapsing in front of the entire town. "Your Honor," Patricia said desperately, "my client's personal relationships are not relevant to the financial aspects of this divorce. They are when those relationships involve potential financial fraud." Judge Lawton replied, "I am postponing final judgment in this case pending the results of the forensic audit. If evidence of hidden assets or financial misconduct is found, I will consider sanctions against the offending party." As we left the courthouse, Helena pushed past me without making eye contact. Derek was waiting for her in the parking lot, and I watched them have a heated argument beside his expensive car. Their body language suggested that their relationship was under considerable strain. Mike approached me as I reached my truck. "How did I do?" he asked. "Perfect. Better than I could have hoped." "What happens now?" "Now we wait for the audit results, and we see how long it takes for Helena and Derek's relationship to fall apart under pressure." Mike nodded and started to walk away, then turned back. "For what it's worth," he said, "I don't think she deserved you." As I drove home to my empty house, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: hope. Helena had overplayed her hand, gotten greedy and careless. Now her lies were catching up with her, and everyone in town had witnessed her humiliation. The game wasn't over yet, but for the first time since this started, I was winning. The forensic audit took 3 weeks to complete. During that time, Helena's perfect facade continued to crumble in spectacular fashion. Word of the courthouse drama had spread through town like wildfire, and people were beginning to question everything they thought they knew about our marriage. The first crack appeared when Derek stopped showing up at Helena's apartment. I learned this from Tommy, who had maintained surveillance on both of them. Derek's expensive car was no longer parked in Helena's building's garage, and he'd been seen at restaurants around town with other women. "Looks like Romeo is cutting his losses," Tommy reported. "Probably figured out that Helena comes with more baggage than he bargained for." The second crack came when Helena's employer, First National Bank, placed her on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Apparently, the forensic auditor had discovered some irregularities in accounts Helena had access to at work. "She's been skimming," my lawyer explained during one of our meetings. "Small amounts from multiple accounts, transferred to personal accounts she controlled. Nothing huge, but enough to constitute embezzlement." The third crack was the most satisfying. Helena had to move out of her expensive downtown apartment and into a cheap efficiency on the wrong side of town. Her friends stopped returning her calls, her social media posts went unnoticed, and she was reduced to shopping at discount stores instead of the boutiques she'd once frequented. When the audit results were finally presented to Judge Lawton, Helena's financial crimes were laid out in devastating detail. She had hidden over $80,000 in assets, including money transferred from our joint accounts, items removed from our home, and funds embezzled from the bank. But the most damaging revelation was the paper trail showing her relationship with Derek. The auditor had traced payments from Helena to Derek's consulting firm, payments for services that had never been provided. She had been funneling our money to her lover, probably to help him maintain the lifestyle that had attracted her in the first place. "Mrs. Trenwick," Judge Lawton said during the final hearing, "you have committed fraud against this court, against your husband, and against your employer. I am not only denying your requests for property division and spousal support, I am recommending that the district attorney investigate you for embezzlement and perjury." Helena sat in stunned silence as her lawyer tried to negotiate some kind of plea arrangement. But Patricia Vance was clearly done with this case. She'd been lied to by her own client and made to look foolish in front of the entire legal community. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I am awarding Mr. Trenwick full ownership of the marital home, all vehicles and damages in the amount of $120,000 to compensate him for the funds you illegally transferred." Helena finally spoke up, her voice shrill with desperation. "Your Honor, I can't pay that amount. I don't have access to those funds anymore." "Then you should have thought of that before you decided to defraud your husband and this court." As we left the courthouse for the final time, Helena was surrounded by reporters and curious onlookers. Her humiliation was complete and public, exactly what she had tried to do to me. Mike was waiting by my truck, looking pleased with how everything had turned out. "Justice served?" he asked. "Justice served," I confirmed. "Thank you for everything you did." "My pleasure. Always happy to help an honest man get what he deserves." I drove home to the house that was now legally mine, thinking about how much my life had changed in just a few months. I'd gone from being a naive husband who trusted his wife completely to a man who had learned to fight back against deception and betrayal. The house felt different now, cleaner somehow, like Helena's lies and secrets had been scrubbed away along with her physical presence. I walked through the rooms we'd once shared, no longer seeing reminders of our failed marriage, but possibilities for a new beginning. My phone rang as I was standing in the kitchen. Marty's name appeared on the screen. "So, how does it feel to be a free man?" he asked. "Expensive," I said. "Helena's legal bills are going to cost her everything she tried to steal from me." "And Derek?" "Gone. Disappeared the minute things got complicated. Turns out he wasn't interested in a relationship with a woman who came with criminal charges and financial problems." "Good. What about you? What's next?" I looked around the kitchen where Helena had cooked dinner while planning her betrayal, where she'd answered phone calls from her lover while pretending to care about our marriage. Soon, I would renovate this space, make it mine again. "I'm thinking about expanding the garage," I said, "maybe hiring some help. Business has been picking up since word got around about how I handled the divorce. People respect a man who fights back intelligently." "Apparently so." I've had 3 new customers this week, all of them mentioning that they heard I was someone who could solve problems. After I hung up with Marty, I walked out to my garage and stood looking at the Mustang I'd been restoring. The car was almost finished now, engine rebuilt, bodywork completed, paint gleaming under the fluorescent lights. It had taken months of patient work, careful attention to detail, and refusal to accept anything less than perfection. Just like my revenge against Helena. I thought about calling Ava, my daughter who had sided with her mother throughout this entire ordeal. She was still in college, still convinced that I was the villain in this story. Maybe someday she would understand what really happened. Maybe someday she would want to have a relationship with her father again. But I wasn't going to chase after her or try to justify my actions. I'd learned the hard way that some people would believe what they wanted to believe, regardless of evidence to the contrary. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. When I opened it, I found a photo of Helena standing outside a rundown apartment building, looking tired and defeated. Below the image was a message. Thought you might want to see how the other half lives now. I deleted the message without responding. Helena's downfall was complete, but I didn't need to gloat over her misery. The satisfaction came from knowing that justice had been served, that her lies had caught up with her, and that I had emerged from this battle stronger and wiser than before. I started the Mustang's engine and listened to it purr with mechanical perfection. The sound was smooth and powerful, exactly what I'd been working toward all these months. Tomorrow, I would take it for its first real drive since the restoration began. I would cruise through town with the windows down, past the courthouse where Helena had been humiliated, past the motel where she'd betrayed our marriage, past the storage facility where her crimes had been discovered. But tonight, I would simply enjoy the satisfaction of a job well done. Helena had wanted to destroy me, to leave me with nothing while she built a new life with her lover. Instead, she had lost everything: her marriage, her job, her reputation, her financial security, and her freedom. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But sometimes, it's even better when it's served publicly, legally, and with the full weight of justice.